And just a minor modification of the title. My field here is the response of the West, Europe. But in these decades up to the 1270, but in this present talk, I will cover only the first few years, because if these 3 decades, 30 years would not fit in the time scale of this presentation. So I will be investigating, first of all, mainly Germany and the German territories in Italy, not France and England. I have been doing researches on regarding the participation of France and England, mainly England and Edward I, King of England in the late 13th century. But for the present time, I will be concentrating on the very year, mainly 1241. And I'm trying to gather now the news or the reports also that reach Germany and the western part of Germany, the Rhinelands and the Netherlandish Low Countries provinces, and also take a look at what kinds of information were transferred, in what ways, through what kind of channels. I also wish to explore how some personally touched, individually moved princes, like, for example, Otto, the first Duke of Braunschweig, reacted to exhortations to take up arms, or how the organization of defense was to be treated or taken over by some individually concerned prelates, for example, the Archbishop of Magdeburg, in the or throughout the network of the church. So how did the West respond in the very year, also early in the spring of 41, and who were those who took it seriously, the threat, the menace from the outset, and took the defense efforts in their own hands, since we all know that Pope Gregory IX died, and Emperor Frederick II was engaged in warring his Gulf adversaries in Italy. But there were other pillars of the crusading zeal in the very year. For example, Henry Raspe of Thuringia, who made sacrifices on the altar of the Negotium Christi. And it's conspicuous that even contemporaries awaited and expected help from others other than the emperor himself or the Holy See, because the principalities and provinces under imminent threat could not await whenever Emperor Frederick would finally win over his sworn enemy, his Antichrist, the Pope. And they were in Germany a range of provinces and clerics who were to engage all potential parties in the effort of defense, from even Lausitz to Brabant. And first, a few words on the sources, but I will be touching reports and letters, some that some survived in the works of Matthew Paris, but here it is not my task to take a stand on the authenticity of the St. Albans chronicler, but just a few words. There are here in the company of ours that have greater expertise than me on Matthew Paris, but we need to treat some of his letters here, and have them included in the corpus of research material, because We need to treat these letters that survive because it is the only place. Matthew Perry is the only source there that there survived. So it's true that research have been charging Matthew Perry with forging or tampering. I would be saying that, for tampering with the content of the sources, but he was well informed. He had a commitment to gather, collect all the sources possible, and he had access to the Red Book of the Exchequer at the English court, and where he had access to diplomatic correspondence, and he had in his hand so much a greater number of authentic diplomatic sources than any other contemporary historian or history writer. He was fully informed, and his knowledge far surpassed that of the papal court, or even that of Louis the Ninth, King of France. And even though research raised some doubts about and miscredited his findings in the letters he is publishing, or he was publishing, I think at least some core information within the within the depth of the Paris reports and accounts, we need to treat at least, or take into the corpus of the accounts. First, the news of the invasion of the Mongols in Hungary and in Poland was or had to be known very early, by the early April, by the early days of April in Italy. Even we have a letter from Albert von Beheim from Landshut in Bavaria to the Pope first, and the range of Italian prelates, and you can see the first slide. In Italy, that he knew at that time, but even before his first letter is before the battles of Muhi and Lenza to Italy, and when he warned of the threat to Bavaria and it in itself, Germany, Alemannia, and so. It is a very unfortunate that the Pope himself, Gregory the Ninth, it was the earliest time when he reacted, the Holy See reacted, or at least mentioned that the Christian Church was attacked by the horrible nation of these invaders. So it's only June 4th. 14, the threat was long known in Italy before that time, months before, and it was at that time the envoy of the King of Hungary, Bela IV, namely István, Bishop of Vach, reached himself the papal court in the middle of June. And we know that the Pope commissioned that envoy to recruit a crusading army, and gave indulgences to those who were to take up arms and to take the cross against the Mongols, in the same way, or the same indulgences that he was to give to the fighters of the cross in the Holy Land. But in practice, nothing happened even in June in Italy. The Hungarian envoy also visited the emperor himself, Frederick II, but the emperor was quite busy in warring his enemies, the rebellious Guelph cities of Faenza, and for months from September 1240. And when he received the envoy, he was not even interested, not at all, of the Mongol invasion, but even he was not at all concerned of the offer of the Hungarian envoy, of the Hungarian king's offer of vassalage, a fief. King Bela offered the country, the kingdom, his crown as a fief to the emperor. But of course, it's an interesting question. There's no time to address it here, but this offer of vassalage did only survive in two contemporary accounts. First, Richard of San Germano, or Riccardo de San Germano, and the Annals of Cologne, and there is no other mention of contemporary mention of state documents and diplomatic documents of the imperial court. But it took a long time that the emperor at least reacted to the news. It was the very end of June, or even the beginning of July, that he reacted. After 3 or 4 months, and the emperor himself was frankly not at all worried about the Mongols. He was much more worried about his siege engines, the situation, or the condition of his siege engines besieging the walls of Spoleto or Faenza. But by the time the emperor had received information from the invasion of the Mongols, we know for sure from the king of Bohemia, Wenceslas, the Duke of Austria, Otto the second, Duke of Bavaria. And we know some of his letters, the emperor's letters. He was in phraseology, committed to take a stand against the imminent menace. And he also worded that proximo ardente pariete, the closest bulwark is on fire, and we have to lay down our arms. But he did nothing. There was some hope that instead of setting siege to Bologna, he was going to treat with the Pope, but it did not occur at all. And the only thing he answered to the envoy of King Bela, that you should join your banners with my sons Conrad's in Germany. And we know his letter to King of England, Henry III, in beginning of July, which was, or might have been, tempered by Matthew Paris himself, but for us, there might be a core information which is important for us, that he charged his son Conrad and the princes of the empire to raise an army against the Mongols, because they are threatening the whole Christianity, and the disaster overhangs of the whole Christendom. And it speaks out that the Mongols were at that time reaching the marches of Austria, and they are preparing to make inroads, plunders to Germany, and they are at the gate of Christendom, Janua Christianitatis. So in a way, the emperor might have been aware of the situation, but it was more important for him to at least come to an agreement with the Pope, or to organize, still organize the league, his league against the Pope. The second letter we have, it is also preserved by Matthew Paris. This is a very well-known story when the letter displays quite a theatrical dialogue between Queen Blanche of Castile and Louis IX. I wouldn't like to get into details into it, but again, the core information for us, it might be important that the emperor is still seeking for an answer of the King of France, that whether he would join him in his intrigues against the Pope. But we do not know. And there is a letter, a reply letter to the King of England by the King of France, and there is no word of the Mongol invasion in that letter in July 41, and we do not know anything that the King of France, whether the King of France did anything. And the Pope also wrote to the mendicant orders, Cistercians, to Germany to preach for the cross, and even gave licenses to commutatio. But nothing's changed in Italy. Frederick's armies were moving in July towards Spoleto, and they were setting sieges to Fano, Assisi, Rieti, Narni, and Tivoli, and they were encamped down on the walls of Rome. And so the emperor was not even moved by the Mongols, and even though he was aware that there are some bare at the gates of Germany. We have documents on Germany's, on the Kingdom of Germany's reaction against the Mongol threat. We have two documents, the Encyclica contra Tartaros and the Praecepta Bellica, but it was, of course, officially issued by the emperor in Spoleto at the end of June, but it was made by the Res Gubernium and the Res Gubernator Siegfried, Archbishop of Mainz, in May and in June. The German nobility was called into arms, and the Praecepta Bellica even gave orders to raise or recruit specific militia, crossbowmen, ballistari, and also rendered supplies and logistics, especially it is especially spelled out in the Praecepta Bellica that non fiat servisias et frumentum servetur, so not corn, or corn of course, but not beer for the fortified places, and they are to prevent open field pitched battles, but have to raise, even pay shield bearers for the army. So there was a mobilization in Germany, but it was not from the emperor. It was not from his son either, because it's true that historiography treats that Conrad IV was in fact actively involved in the crusading effort, but historiographers usually or tend to forget about that he was not even 30 years old. It was more or less a child, and he was not governing Germany at the time. It was the Res Gubernator and the Res Gubernium, led by the Archbishop of Mainz, and other prelates, other very much concerned prelates who were taking the lead. Conrad, Archbishop Cologne and Wilbrand, Archbishop of Magdeburg, and they were insensitive or they were not indifferent to the threat. That is why King Bela IV wrote a letter to Conrad himself, but he was not naive. The king was also aware that the empire, the kingdom of Germany, is run by the Archbishop of Mainz, and it is true. The King Bela also wrote that the Mongols would advance unimpeded without any difficulty towards Germany, and from there there will be no one to prevent them from occupying all the provinces of Europe. And by very early time, in April 25th, the Archbishop of Mainz convened an assembly at Erfurt, Fürstentag, and proclaimed the crusade. And there were other prelates who were quite active prelates in organization. For example, you can see from their correspondence, the Bishop of Freising and the Bishop of Constance, Henry, Bishop of Constance, also wrote in a letter that the Mongols did even reach and attack the boundaries of the Diocese of Mainz. And Conrad himself issued a Landfrieden for whole Germany, and summoned all the princes and the nobles to come to Hoftag in the middle of May in Esslingen, and issued a Mandatum Regis contra Tartaros, and that's very a great number of the nobility of Pfalz, Rhineland, Lower Lorraine, Swabia joined the banner of Christ, and Conrad himself rendered them to take the field by July the 1st. And it's true that he himself took up arms and moved eastwards to the boundaries of the empire, to the Czech border, and he was in July 16th invaded a very few miles from the Czech border. But I think it was the activization and the mobilizations was necessary. Then we have reports that the Mongols were ravaging the boundaries of Meissen and Saxony, and raging and plundering in the valley of the Oder. But I think this is not my task, but my Polish and Czech colleagues to issue this field or subfield as to it is quite frequently noted in the sources that the marauders led forays into Germany, and we could see in Nagy Balázs's map a few minutes before that the Mongols even advanced further west from the river Oder and further west from the river Neisse and even Elba, and the marches of Lausitz and present-day Brandenburg were under threat, and even one army of the Mongols reached the lands of the Teutonic Order and the Baltic Sea, around Torun and Dansk. So that is why Saxony was, and in Thuringia was in an active zeal, a crusading zeal. And the engine was the Archbishop of Magdeburg, and the center was Saxony, and Reichstag was held in Merseburg in April 22nd, very early. And another engine of the recruitment in Thuringia was Heinrich Raspe, Landgrave of Thuringia. We'll be coming back to him. And even there was a time that Wenceslas, King of Bohemia, came to Saxony and discussed defense measures with Albert I, Duke of Saxony, and they in October he treated with Raspe, Heinrich Raspe, Landgrave of Thuringia in Hradec Králové. So in these regions, I think in Germany there was some preparation, I think, against the Mongols. They were not in the same way doing nothing like the emperor. An active role was played by Otto, Duke of Braunschweig, and we have a very interesting and a Flemish and an English source, Annals of Tewkesbury and Philip Musket, a Flemish chronicler that noted his skirmish or even battle against the Mongols.
Sorry, Attila, we are running out of time. Try to conclude your paper.
Okay, yes, please.
Sorry to warn you.
3-4 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, so the others, the Duke of, so it was not the Duke of Braunschweig. Duke of Braunschweig also took up arms, but the one I was referring to was Otto II, Duke of Bavaria, who battled against the Mongols, and we know mostly from villas that nobles, certain nobles, a great number of nobles, for example, in Tyrol or in the Frankenstein or Halfenstein grafs took up arms. And of course, it's we have sources from the Templar master Pons d'Aubonne to Saint Louis, and other letters preserved by Matthew Paris that are somehow needed to be treated with doubt, because it's not true that Conrad, King of Conrad, and his half-brother Enzio of Sardinia came and with arms and won over, defeated the Mongols. But it is not my task to speak of this, but Stephen spoke. But the core of the material in Matthew Paris's writings, that Austrian, Saxon, Bavarian princes and a number of prelates were touched, and if not took up arms themselves, but they were to preparing to defend the empire against the Mongols. It's true that Enzi of Sardinia could not have been at that time in there, because he was warring in Italy as a vicar of the emperor. So we have certain knowledge, but the most I would not have a word on now to Austria, because we have a special lecture dedicated to Ivo of Narbonne's text, but just one sentence, that the core information in Ivo of Narbonne's text, that the king of Bohemia, you can see at the bottom side of the slide, that the Patriarch of Aquileia, the Duke of Carinthia, and Baden, Hermann of Baden, came to Austria to fight the Mongols. It cannot be true, but at least a core information that some troops organized by the Patriarch of Aquileia, who was a brother of Saint Hedwig, and the Duke of Carinthia might have been taking part in the defense effort in Austria at that time along the line of the Danube. They were defending the line of the Danube. We know from the letters of Sibotto, Bishop of Augsburg, or other active prelates, Conrad, Bishop of Hildesheim, for example, that they are making up, stacking up supplies along the line of Danube, further to the west from Vienna and Lower Austria. So they are preparing. And the one last word to the very active, the most active participant, Heinrich von Raspe. Just one word to the Hungarian historiography. He is mistaken in all the publications and all the editions of these letters in Hungarian translation. He was mistaken for Hermann Landgrave of Thuringia. It's true now that he is Heinrich Raspe, and he was very active in the eastern part of the empire, piling up supplies, not just organizing processions, but and fasting. But he had concrete, tangible plans and schemes how to protect the borders of the empire. He also recruited crossbowmen, and he had clear-cut plans how to organize the imperial army, engaging all the Swabs, the Franks, the Bavarians, and the Rhineland troops, the Meissen and the Saxon troops. And he also took sides against the Mongols at the very end of the year 441. So just to conclude, I think it has been held mainly in Hungary that Western sources touched the devastation in Hungary rather laconically, and most brief accounts signified that the West was only slightly interested about the crusade. The West does not mean the emperor or the Holy See. There was a Western party that were interested in defense within Germany, and the picture is much more complex. Through a broader scope of channels, correspondence, accounts, etc., it seems that there were princes and ecclesiastics who showed a real concern about the threat and were in fact aware of the weight of the danger. Thank you very much for your attention, and sorry about the time treating. Thank you.